Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Politics of Jesus podcast. I'm your co-host, LaKesha Womack, and I am so excited to kick off this project with none other than the Dr. Obery Hendricks. Welcome, co-host. How are you?
Good, wonderful. I'm glad to be here with you. I'm excited as well to be able to deal with some of these very important issues from a biblical standpoint, an informed biblical standpoint, and so I'm really excited and looking forward to the season. We have a heck of a season ahead of us.
We really do. And a lot of people know you for your book, The Politics of Jesus. So tell us, for the listeners who don't know about it, tell us a little bit about the book and what inspired you to write it.
Politics of Jesus. I wrote The Politics of Jesus because I saw really a need, a real void in the Black folks' understanding of the nature of the Bible. And I think what really got me was that Black folks didn't seem to understand the difference between the moral commitment of the Bible and, moral conservatism and political conservatism. So you had folk following Jerry Falwell, for instance, because they said, well, he's a Christian, even though, he's a neo-segregationist. And I'll tell you, I have a beloved aunt who it's really what drove it home for me. Some years ago, I was invited to write the annotated commentary on the Gospel of John for the Oxford Annotated Bible, one of the early editions. Very proud. I was a young scholar, and I went to my aunt, and no matter how grown we get, they always
right.
Went to her, Aunt Janie, I just want to show you what I did, and my family's very religious, and so I knew she'd be proud, right? And I took Aunt Janie, look what I did, and she said, "Oh, that's nice, but I like Jerry Falwell's Bible better." And she lived in Virginia. She knew that Jerry Falwell was a segregation. She knew that he was behind closing the schools for years to keep from desegregating them, but yet she was confused. He's a Christian. She's a Christian. So she followed him. So that was what really pushed me to start thinking about writing this book. And then also there was this lack of understanding of the radicality of the gospel. And I realized that Karl Marx, to a certain extent, was really right, because religion was the opiate of so many of our folk. So many of our folk, are they don't they believe that we should sit and pray and wait on the Lord and leave it to Jesus. And that's not what Jesus said. Jesus himself was an activist. And to the extent that folk don't understand the radicality of the gospel is the extent to which they aren't really in touch with the kinds of informative and empowering tools of the gospel that can help Black folks' plight in this country. So that's the reason I wrote it. But lastly, what really pushed me over the edge to put pen to pencil is I lectured at Freddie Haynes Church in Dallas, and I had been lecturing on the politics of Jesus around the country. And finally, Freddie said, I heard you do this a number of times. He said, if you don't sit down and write this, I'm going to write it. I better go and write this book.
So we can thank Freddie for pushing you over the edge to get it done.
I give Freddie credit, and he claims it, and he should. And I'm thankful for that.
That's amazing. So where do you think this sanitized version of Jesus came from? I've always been curious about that, because when you think about the Jesus that our ancestors worship, it didn't seem to be the same Jesus that a lot of us kind of go to some of these churches and uplift and sing songs about that don't really relate to our experience.
Yeah. Well, where it came from, I think, to put it in a nutshell, Jesus and his ministry, what he represented was the faith of the oppressed.
Right.
And that was what the gospel was. Jesus spoke to the plight of the people. Give an example. In the Beatitudes is misunderstood when he said, "Blessed are you poor people." You have to ask, why do you have to tell people that they're blessed? unless they don't understand they're blessed.
Right.
They're crushed. So Jesus was speaking to that. He spoke to debt in the Lord's Prayer, the debt system that was crushing people underfoot. He said, you should be telling his disciples, you have to be concerned about these things. But it was, in a nutshell, what we up until things started changing as the nature of the predominant centers of faith started becoming urban, because remember Jesus was rural peasantry, and it became much more Greco-Roman. By the time we get to the 4th century with Emperor Constantine, who is the emperor of Rome, the empire that tortured Jesus to death as a seditionist, was at that point that the faith of the oppressed became the religion of the oppressor.
Right.
And Constantine himself anointed himself the 13th apostle appointed by God, which means that nobody could question him. So he started convening councils to try to evolve a notion of what are the orthodox principles that a person has to believe to be a Christian in good standing. And he convened councils. He brought ministers in from around the empire, who religious leaders who pretty much supported him, and they got together and decided that what would be the tenets of the faith, none of which would challenge imperial hegemony. And that is essentially what was the case. So since that time, since Constantine, Christianity, mainstream traditional Christianity has always, I'd say mainstream Christianity has always been aligned with the powers that be, all the way through up until this time. And that is why we have this domesticated Jesus, because the empire does not want to see that the man that they worship, whose teachings that they hold dear and sacred, that he really was a radical, politically radical figure. And that's one of the reasons we're doing this podcast, to try to address that kind of misunderstanding.
I love that. And as you were talking, I was thinking about some of the councils that we have now in the form of conferences that essentially do the same thing, right? Like, we have these meetings that make people feel like, they're really doing something, when it's really just like a way to pacify people into thinking that they're acting when they're actually not acting, and people are still outside hungry. So it's like you spend $1,000 on a hotel and travel and food to be in this conference to talk about the oppressed, but then you have people outside the hotel who are hungry, and you're doing nothing to alleviate those problems.
Exactly. I mean, I'm ordained to AME Church. I'm a preacher myself. And so I'm not, ragging on preachers, but these preaching conferences seem like all we have is preaching conferences, and you take them all and put them all together, and almost nothing comes out that can better the plight of our people. It makes people feel better, maybe.
Right.
Some of them really are about preaching performances. No. We, the church today, there, and with few exceptions, is not about liberating the people. Just like, I wrote an article years ago about gospel music. It's like gospel music, the spirituals were about liberating the people. I mean, the major motif in the spirituals was the Exodus, right? Mm-hmm. And when you look at the spirituals, it's talking about how we're going to be free one day. Well, by the time we got to gospel music, when folk got, through the urban migration, and they realized that going north was not the promised land, it was just the broken land of broken promises. Well, that's how gospel music evolved in that setting. And that's where the music comes out and says, just leave it to Jesus, right? And that's the foundation of the music. That's apocalyptic. We're just saying that we can't do anything. We're too weak to change it, so we just leave it to Jesus. Well, that is the primary motif of so many churches today, is that, let's praise him. And I'm like, well, yes, praise the Lord. But, how about if we think about praising the Lord with our limbs as much as we do with our lips. Get out here and get off our rusty dusties and start doing some of the things that Jesus said to do. So, because look at Matthew 25. He said, look, if you ain't trying to help nobody, then you're going to hell. And that's the way that we're to be judged, not how much we go to church and praise and all of that. No, nothing's wrong with praising with your lips. But in my opinion, that's overdone these days. It's taken on a life of its own. And I know I'm going on, but I will say this: I'm all for praising.
Yes,
I'm all for it, particularly when it inspires folks to get up and go out and change the world. I think of the movie Glory, the night before that last climactic battle, when those men knew that they were risking their lives, but they had to strike a blow for the freedom of their people. Remember how they were singing? And they was collective. It wasn't any showing off and all that, but they were deep within their spirituality to empower themselves to get out and change the world. Well, that's what I'm talking about. And that's what the gospel should do for us. And that's the radicality of Jesus. And those are the kind of things I've tried to share in the politics of Jesus.
Well, I know I receive a lot of critique. I'll say people critique my critique of the church as if I don't love the church, as if my critique is somehow rooted in malice. And I don't think that people realize that when we say these things about the church, it's not because of our disdain for the church, but it's because of our deep love for the church and seeing like the possibilities of what we can be. Because I think just thinking about like all the social institutions, like the Black church is still the largest collective power that Black people have. And I feel like it does us such a disservice when we allow that collective power to go unused.
Yeah.
Economically, politically, socially, the Black church, even with its declining membership, still remains the largest stronghold of power that we as Black people have. But I think that somehow, like you were talking about, like we become pacified in just our praise. And there's nothing wrong with praise. Like I love a good praise. I love a good worship. I love a good shout. But what happens on Monday when I can't feed my family? What happens on Tuesday when I get an eviction notice? What happens on Wednesday when I lose my job? Like, where is the church outside of the praise and worship?
Absolutely. You're so right. The church is Black church has been so important for Black folks. I grew up in the church, and I know how it gave us children sense of somebodyhood. It gave us our moral compass and
public speaking skills.
Oh yeah, man! I remember you had to learn your piece. It wasn't an essay; it was a piece. Right. And don't forget it. That's when the folk really support you. Don't forget it and start crying and say, "Come on, child." Give you a sense of somebody, somebodyness. Really, they had a really embraces the children of the future. Remember, all of us can remember how there would be some elders of the church you walk by, they slip a piece of candy or a nickel or a dime, a quarter in your hand, just to let you know that they love you. So the church is so very important. And I'm with you, LaKesha. We're not. But Jesus also took a prophetic position. And, with prophecy, we need to just define it just for a moment. Most people think about prophecy, think about Miss Cleo. They think about
right, like psychic readings.
About foretelling the future. And that's part of prophecy, but it's the lesser part. The primary part and the first step of a prophecy is speaking truth to power, critiquing the abuses, exploitation, oppressions that those in power are foisting upon the people. And sort of secondarily, it's also about critiquing, sinful practices in society going wrong. And so it's something like, you are oppressing my people, you are exploiting my people, you're doing this and that to my people. That's prophetic critique. That's foretelling. Foretelling is, and if you don't stop, the Lord's going to bring you low, right? Well, Jesus took that prophetic position as well. I mean, he was always critiquing the religious establishment, not because he was trying to tear it down, because he was trying to remind folk of its real power. And so what I see you referring to that causes you to be criticized, and I get it too, is that we are trying to take the prophetic imperative of Jesus seriously, right? And the way I see it is, the bulk of our people is in the church, and we cannot abandon them to wrong-headed, disempowering ideas, racist ideas, classist ideas, sexist ideas. I mean, that's one of the major struggles today. I mean, treating women as second-class citizens. Southern Baptist Convention, the largest religious organization in America, oppresses women, says women can't preach, can't be pastors, can't be in the pulpit. So we have a responsibility, believers, to try to remove these false overlays from the Bible, so we can get to the real heart of biblical power. But I'd like to share something I saw today. It's just a quick quote from Søren Kierkegaard, that great Danish theologian. He said, "The human race in the course of time has taken the liberty of softening Christianity until at last we have contrived to make it exactly the opposite of what it is in the New Testament." And that is what we have to struggle with, because Jesus, in his inaugural statement, when he told the world who he was in what Luke shows as his first sermon, he said, "The Spirit of the Lord's upon me, not to make me hollow, shall bump my head on the ceiling, fall out." The Spirit of the Lord's upon me because he's anointed me made me Messiah, has anointed me to preach good news to the poor. And what is that? That's preaching systemic change, saying that he came to be the herald of changing systems, so that the systems and the laws, the policies, the relationships, attitudes that made people poor and keep them poor, that he came to be the herald of that, those things are to be changed. And so we have to work to remind our people and call our people that the gospel is about fighting principalities and powers, about fighting oppressive systems, and not just going along and getting along. And for many Christians, that's very, very different. But I have found that when we lift up the real message of Jesus and practicality, people are drawn to it.
They're drawn to it. When I was in seminary, Keisha, those of us who go into seminary know that after your first semester of seminary, you know everything. You know that everybody. Well, I was invited to preach. The late Carl Hunter invited me to preach at his church, Mount Zion AME Church in Trenton, New Jersey. He invited me to preach at the 8 o'clock service. And, I was, I'm coming. I'm going to tell these folks something. So I came. I was going to come, and the sermon I had, the title of the sermon, is laughable, but it was "The Political Economy of the Lord's Prayer." Like, who the heck wants to hear that?
Did you preach that?
Let me tell you, the 8 o'clock service. The reason I brought that up because that was the young people's service, and I'm saying maybe we can just get some going. And I rolled up to the church and I found out it was the old people's service. The young people's service. I'm like, oh Lordy. But I was inexperienced. I didn't know what else to preach, so I had to go and do it. Well, our people are, so loving. And afterward, they were coming up. That was a good.
That's a good try.
But I saw an elder sister way in the back of the church. It was a sizable church, and she was on a walker, and she's come up the center aisle, and she is frowning. I'm like, oh my God! I'm looking at her, and she's looking dead at me, and I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna get it now.
And the closer she got, the seemed like the more angry she got, and the more scared I got. Finally, she got up to me. She said, "Reverend," I wasn't Reverend then, but all preachers are Reverend to
Right,
her.
right.
"Reverend," I said, "Yes, ma'am. I always know there was something wrong with what they was teaching us." And I realized at that point that our people are really ready for. She could hear underneath all of the fluff. She could hear the revolutionary message of it, and so that's why that is why it's so important to present the message to our people. They are ready for it. They know something's wrong.
Right, right. So getting back on topic, because I just think so much of you and love talking to you. So very excited about this show. What has surprised you most about your work with the politics of Jesus? Just like the response from people, like what's been the biggest surprise for you?
Well, yeah, that's a good point. I've published 4 books, and under my own name, I co-wrote a biography for someone, autobiography of someone. But all those books, the politics of Jesus has been extraordinary. The response has been deeply, deeply gratifying. I mean, it is. Well, just a month or 2 ago, it was included in Sojourner magazine's list of the 25 best faith and justice books of the 21st century.
Wow.
I've been invited to Europe to lecture on the politics of Jesus, to Africa to lecture on the politics of Jesus. It has made me the most widely read Black biblical scholar in America today, and it's been really extraordinary, the response. I mean, Black and white, and right. I get letters every day. In fact, I think I shared with you. My dear sister Gina Stewart shared with me. She'd gone into an office, a business office, and she saw on the gentleman's desk 2 of my books, and I'm like, and so she was kind enough to tell me, and then the gentleman said he wanted us to send me a message to tell me how much the book had meant to him.
Wow.
So I mean, it's been beyond I shouldn't say it's been beyond my expectation, because I knew that I was faithfully filling a need, and so it's been a wonderful and engaging experience. And I mean, I've heard like from Dr. Lawson, civil rights leader, from Nashville, Reverend Lawson. I never call him by his first name. So. Reverend Lawson, one of my civil rights heroes, he told me he's used it in his classes. Another hero from South Africa, freedom fighter, Alan Bosak, has said something similar. Jesse Jackson said that he reminded me that Martin Luther King carried Howard Thurman's Jesus and the Disinherited with him. Mm-hmm. Everywhere he went. And Jesse says that's what he does with the politics of Jesus. And, politicians, I've heard from major politicians, thanking me. That's helped, the book has helped give them a sort of direction and bearing for their campaign. So it's just been an extraordinary experience. I mean, I've traveled all over, and I'm still getting invitations, sometimes 2-3 a week. To speak on the politics of Jesus. It's been a very gratifying experience. I'm very thankful that I've been able to make some kind of contribution.
I love that. And I'm fortunate enough to have you as my co-host on this podcast. So it's hard to believe that it's been almost 20 years since you published the book. Like, what made you decide that a podcast was a next step for this project?
Yeah, actually, you're right. Next year will be the 20th anniversary of the book.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say, I can't take so much credit because I was at a conference in Atlanta at the Emory Conference Center. I think it was an AME conference, and I spoke there, and And on one of the days I'd gone out to lunch, came back late. I still had my sunglasses on. I was sitting in the back, and I heard this sister. I couldn't see because my sunglasses still on, and the lights were a little dim. I had this sister. I'm like, who is this? She was speaking with such prophetic, critical power. I'm like, whoa. As it turned out, it was my sister, Reverend LaKesha Womack, who I initially had met when she was had her own successful podcast some years ago. She interviewed me on it. So we talked, and I was, and always impressed from her podcast. I mean, really, it was really, high class in many ways. I mean, God, even sent out thank you packages afterward and all that. It was wonderful. And so, so I was, busy complimenting you like so many people, but you said to me that I should have a podcast, right? And I said, well,
I did.
I don't know how to do a podcast. I said, but you do, because you do it successfully. How about if we do it together? And so I'm very, very happy. I mean, our partnership in the planning and our dialogue and everything leading up to this has just been really, really, really wonderful, really top shelf. And that's how we end up sitting here.
That's how we got here.
Yeah.
I love it. So what are you most excited about? Because we have some really dynamic guests that are coming on. What are you most excited about our first season together?
Well, what or who?
Either one, you pick.
Well, I'm really excited. We have some really powerful people who are coming on. Like, for instance, next week, our dear friend Michael Eric Dyson, Reverend Dr. Michael Eric Dyson, will be coming on and talking about something very important: the Black folks' traditional response to fascism. And that's important because when most people think about resistance to fascism, they think about the resistance in Europe, in France and in Poland, all that, how Europeans. Well, Black folks have, we have our own resources, cultural and religious resources that has guided us to deal with the various kinds of fascism that we have experienced, and it's so very important to talk about that. And I'm not just talking about civil rights. I'm talking about there's been some heavy stuff going on that we don't talk about. Well, Dr. Dyson is going to be talking about that. He wrote an article in Los Angeles Times, just published it, about Toni Morrison's way she's dealt with written about that subject, and so impressed. I'm so excited he's coming. Dear friend Reverend Raphael Warnock, Senator Warnock, he has agreed to come on. God, our sister Reverend Dr. Renita Weems, who's scary powerful. He's going to be talking about womanism and how women can the fight for women's rights and how women can continue on. Name some of the others that we're talking about.
Well, Dr. William Lamar is definitely one that I'm looking forward to. I heard him preach at the Children's Defense Fund farm. And then when I found out about, his movement with the Proud Boys, and I have so many questions. So I'm really excited, really, really excited about that show. And your
Lamar
good friend.
is bad. That Lamar is bad. Oh, yeah, that's going to be a great show. He's talking about how they beat the Proud Boys.
Yes.
I love it.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And then your good friend, Robert Jones, his book, White Too Long, is like one of my favorite books, outside of your books, of course. It's one of my favorite books. And so, just like the different ways that like white people read scripture and like what Black people read, like I'm just really interested. Just the way like he unpacked like the way white Christian nationalism is formed in white people is very fascinating to me, because like their political ideology and their religious ideology, like it all comes together. Whereas for us, it's like this fictitious notion of a separation of church and state, where we think that they have to be different, but for them, like it's all one thing. And so,
I mean, Robert Jones. I mean, I serve on the board of his organization, PRI, and I mean, I tease him, call him a race traitor, because, because his books are just such a deeply informed indictment of white supremacy. I mean, I swear by the books. I love. In fact, White Too Long won the Grawemeyer Award. It's a major award with, I don't want to tell his business, but it's a six-figure check with it. So it's a major award. So he's brilliant. That's going to be really great. And then, you know, my dear sister, Teresa Fry Brown.
Yes.
She's going to be talking about shifts, the sacred shifts in the church, how we can embrace change in culture in a shifting church. And that's so important. Teresa is such a fount of wisdom.
She is. She just exudes wisdom. Like just standing next to her, you just feel smarter.
Yeah. And then my brother, Reverend Starsky Wilson, and the Children's Defense Fund. That brother is scary smart. First off, he preaches. He's such a good preacher that if I didn't love him, I'd hate him, because he made me feel he's a hell of a preacher. But he's also a brilliant thinker, and is I mean, as great as the work that Marion Wright Edelman did for all those years, he's building on it and taking it to a whole other place where Marion wanted it to go. I mean, and what the brother is, his fount of knowledge is just extraordinary. So he's going to be talking about, giving us a sense of what this right-wing MAGA onslaught is doing to the life chances of our children and how we can fight against it. And I have to, this I'm excited about. A sister who's been an icon to me and so many for years. Professor Angela Davis. Has agreed to come on to talk about how the political left and Christian churches can form a common liberation agenda, which is so very important.
It is.
One of the things the politics of Jesus makes clear, when you look at Jesus, the things that Jesus taught, Jesus didn't get all into doctrine and beliefs and all that. What he talked about was ethics, how to treat people, how to treat people in the world, which means that leftists, many of whom are not religious, and faith, Christians of faith, can come together on that common ground, because Jesus wasn't about, what you believe. For instance, he said, when he said, "As you have not done it to the least of these, you haven't done it to me," he didn't say, he's going to judge you by who you, about whether you believe God or not. He didn't ask people that. He said to serve God, right? That's why Mahatma Gandhi, for instance, who wanted nothing to do with the church, was as close a follower to Jesus as anyone that's walked this earth. So for Angela to come on and, she's so wise and gracious and committed to our people, it's going to be a very powerful, touching, and informative discussion. Hopefully it'll help us get an agenda where we can start working together. And for us Christians to not be so exclusive and look down on our noses talking about them radicals. Well, Jesus was a radical. So
we should all be radical in some way.
The gospel's radical. We should all be radical. So I'm looking forward to these discussions. I'm looking forward to learning. I'm looking forward to hearing the comments and questions from our listeners, which is going to be very, very important. And we're not even going to talk about the second season. Man, we got some people lined up that you'll be saying, "Dag!" And then that was coming next week. don't know if I can handle all this.
Right. I don't even know if I can handle it, and I'm one of the hosts.
Yeah.
But it is exciting because I think that a lot of times we have these people who are doing such great work, and you kind of like see the work, but don't often get to hear from them. And that was one of the reasons why I wanted you to do a podcast, because people read your work, but I think more people need to hear your voice and just to hear the passion and the rationale behind like why we do the things that we do. Because sometimes like people think like it's for attention, or you're just trying to sell books. But I think when people can feel our hearts for the work, that's what motivates them to want to get involved in the work as well.
No, I think it's so. I know you're right, because when we think about what is the core of the gospel, which many people don't realize, they'll say it's John 3:16 or something. No, Jesus didn't say that. Jesus said the greatest commandments are to love your Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself is on the social, horizontal level. Yeah. In fact, you can't have a cross without both. You got to do both of them. But so love your neighbor as yourself. I mean, the implications are extraordinary. Number one, what it says is to want for our neighbors the same freedom, the same access to opportunity and material goods and lifestyle, to want for them the same as we want for our neighbors. But then there's an implication that since we would struggle for those things for ourselves, then the commandment to love our neighbors as ourselves is also a commandment to struggle for our neighbors to have all the goods that we want. In other words, it's about struggling for the common good. And so that has to be, I think, the basis of Christianity, of our witness, is that we're called to struggle for the good of everybody, to make this a much better world so everybody can eat of the fruit of the tree of life. So I'm excited about that, about this podcast and the fruit that I will be able to get.
Yes, we will definitely be feasting, because I could just imagine all the knowledge that's going to be shared during this season. So for all of you listeners, you can go to thepoliticsofjesuspodcast.com if you want to see our show lineup for this season, and you'll get more information about where you can find this show. We'll be on all podcast platforms, so we'll be broadcasting on Thursday evenings at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and then we'll be uploaded to podcast platforms on Monday morning. So you can listen on your way to work on Mondays, or you can watch us on Thursday evenings. So before we go, where can people find more information about you?
Well, I'd like to, I write a Substack account, and I try to publish on it a couple of times a week. And the Substack is called the New Politics of Jesus, in which I try to deal with the issues of the day, but from a biblical, ethical perspective. I mean, taking into account the ethics of the Bible. I would love for our listeners to subscribe to it, because I deal with all kinds of stuff, and I've had to whip Trump up pretty badly a bunch of times, but I do it from an informed perspective and from a biblical perspective. But there are so many things that are being hidden. For instance, Mike Huckabee is the new ambassador to Israel, but Mike Huckabee hates Palestine. He will not even use the word Palestine. For him, Palestine does not exist, but he is the ambassador to Israel. What does that? So what does that? They've sort of hidden that, but what does it tell you? That the administration is from the beginning about crushing Palestine. There's so many things. I write about immigration and the torture chamber for that immigrants' children, and deal with all kinds of issues, and some personal things in there as well. And so I hope that folks subscribe to it and comment, so we can all struggle together, because this is a struggle, a fight that we have to fight for our children. If we don't stop this evil onslaught, and it is evil, anything that will crush innocent people just because you can is evil. If we don't stop this evil MAGA onslaught, I shudder to think what this country will be 10 years from now. I mean, what our children would go through. I have an 8-year-old great-granddaughter, and it scares me to think that if we don't stop this, what her life might be like. And we get a sense of what it could be like when we look at all the fascist regimes around the world. So this is important. And so I hope people subscribe and check us out every Thursday night. And if you can't see us live, well, catch us on Monday because we love the Lord. He heard our cry, and we're trying to do his radical will in the world.
Amen. Amen. And you can find me at LaKesha Womack on all social media platforms. And don't forget to, on all social media, even though I don't post a lot, but yeah, still come over and check me out. But next week, our first official episode, September 11th, we will have the Reverend Dr. Michael Eric Dyson. So thank you guys so much for tuning in to our pre-show. Come back next week and bring your questions, bring your comments, bring your concerns. We want to hear them. We might not do anything about them, but we still want to hear it.
We'll do our best.
We'll do our best. We'll do our best.
Okay.
But thank you so much for tuning in.
God bless everyone. And keep up the struggle.